when you take advantage of a tax code known as 831B and use pre-tax dollars or after-tax dollars.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. And think of this as like an HSA for your business, right? If you're familiar with health savings accounts, what a health savings account was originally designed for was to cover expenses that your existing insurance plan either wasn't going to cover, or you had first dollar out of pocket before your insurance didn't even kick in. So now you pre-fund that, right?
Welcome to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. I'm your host, LaMont Leavitt. In a world overflowing with noise, confusion, and distraction, we're here to cut through the clutter and explore bold, unique paths to a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. Through candid conversations with business leaders, wellness experts, industry pioneers, and innovators, we'll uncover insights to help you discover your own personalized, unique approach to thriving. Tune in, trust the compass of wisdom within, and find your fountain of vitality. Hello, welcome to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. Thank you for joining us today. My name is LaMont Leavitt. I'm your host, and today we're excited to have with us Van Carlson from 831B.com. He's the founder and has got some great stuff to tell us today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Lamont, for having me on your podcast. I looking forward to our conversation. We just did a preliminary talk, and I thought it was good. So I'm looking forward to this podcast for sure. So,
well, tell me a little bit about how kind of your history and how you got into this and with insurance and why this insurance is different than most insurances that are out there.
Yeah, you bet. I've been in the risk management arena for literally since '96. So that's 30 years, right? Yeah, 30 years. And went down the traditional channels, managing business owners' risks through traditional insurances. And then really 08 came along and the Great Recession hit. And I realized, there was a lot of things that business owners just could not buy traditional insurance that was going to cover. And one of them, the big one, was the financial risk. Business owners take every day to run their business. And there's a ton of tax incentives out there. I mean, one of them we all know is accelerated depreciation. Business owners that can buy equipment for their business and all that kind of stuff can accelerate the entire price of that equipment that year, even though they may finance it, right? And that's really what I saw. I live in Idaho. Idaho was, gangbusters in 08. Really, it's never stopped. We got a lot of Californians moving up here still, but it never really, so we were growing a lot, had a lot of subcontractors, general contractors, good business owners that knew their craft well, worked their butt off to run their business, sponsored the little league teams, all that stuff. But they hated paying taxes like every other business owner. And so, they would call me in the fourth quarter and say, "Hey, Van, what's it going to cost to insure another skid steer and a couple more trucks?" Because CPA says, $80,000 in taxes. And then all they did was bet next year was going to be better than this year because they took the accelerated depreciation, but then they financed the equipment. And they just took on debt next year, right? And so very dangerous way of doing business. And everything's fine and dandy until it's not. And I think in a way it's a great awakening for me that I was just, so the 831B tax code is another incentive. It was formed in 1986 under the 86 Tax Reform Act, which was a massive reform act. Just for the record, I was still in high school in Fruitland, to be exact, Fruitland, Idaho.
All right.
So I wasn't paying too much attention back in 1986, but that's when they introduced this tax code. And what was happening back then was farmers were self-insuring their crop insurance. There was a lot of tort reform going on and general liabilities, and a lot of business owners found themselves without insurance, especially through the 80s. Shockingly enough, coming out of the stagflation era and all that, insurance companies were very tight on what they were offering and what they wanted to cover and everything else. And anything that was not profitable, they were getting out of it. Of course, crop insurance was hugely unprofitable because it's catastrophic losses. Just not you. If I have a drought, it's just not my farm having a drought. It's everybody in the county having a drought, right? So,
Right.
Insurance companies don't like that. And now today, obviously, it's backed by the federal government, no different than terrorism is, or FEMA, or some earthquake zones or some hurricane zones are like today with the federal government. But Going back to '08, though, the financial risk we all took and covenants of loans started to mean things. And, I saw these good, stellar, community leaders having to, shut down their business, being auctioned off. And I knew about this code then, but then I didn't really see how it applied to traditional insurance. But then when you sit back and realize that there's just a ton of things that business owners can't transfer risk for. And what I mean by transferring risk is if I pay a premium, I go insure my building, for example. I pay a premium, I transfer my risk to that for fire, theft, vandalism, wind, sudden accident, water damage, whatever, to the building through Travelers, Hartford, any major carrier you can think of. That's great. That's a transfer of risk. And then there's just a lot of risk I got to retain on my books. And then it's just it's how do you want to risk finance it? And do you want to use pre-tax dollars or after-tax dollars? And after-tax dollars is honestly just the operating capital of your business or your personal savings or your lines of credits and all that kind of stuff, right? So anytime an unexpected expense hits you, the money's going to come from somewhere. To me, using pre-tax dollars that just makes a lot of sense. If I owe Uncle Sam some money, I can put away, a portion of that. Expense it still at my operating company level, but I put it in a vehicle known as an 831B, which is really an insurance company that looks in the box has to look and form like an insurance company. It's like taking advantage of accelerated depreciation still, but I still have the money and I haven't leveraged myself out into the future as well on a depreciating asset like a piece of equipment. And so that's really when the light bulb went on for me. And, it took a while for us to get traction in the marketplace. I was fortunate enough. My wife was working for me at the time. I sold my existing insurance agency to my wife and I went full time into this. I believe it so much because I was being trained by some, I would call them mentors in this arena. And I just saw the difference it made for business owners. Business owners that were doing really well back leading up to '08. I mean, '08, the decade of 2000s was rapid economic growth. A lot of business owners were making money. And then the smart ones were taking a portion and setting it aside. And what I saw some of those business owners do, they're the ones that showed up at the auction. They're the ones that bought their competitors out. I mean, they're the ones, they took leverage to a whole nother way, in a much more effective way, to grow their business during the downturns. And so that's really when the light bulb went on. And the auto industry has been doing this for a long time. Most consumers don't know this, but when they sell you a service contract, most dealerships, at least the ones that are smart enough to own their own insurance company, they retain that risk themselves. So if they're charging you $2,000, $2,500 for that service contract for that vehicle they're selling you, they'll retain that risk all day long, and they require you to come back into their dealership to have it worked on too, right? So there's a third-party administrator that sits in the middle of that. There could be another insurance carriers, an A-rated carrier, and all that, depending on the regulations the state you're in. But the auto dealership owner is retaining that risk themselves, and why wouldn't you want to take that risk? I let people know. Warren Buffett's not into selling cars. Warren Buffett is into finance and insurance. If you've ever watched any documentaries on him, when he started understanding insurance floats is when he really got involved in owning insurance companies. He owns Geico. Berkshire Hathaway is one of the largest reinsurance carriers in the world, and it's other people's money, OPM, right? So he's the master of it. And so again, these are all the tools that we see big businesses doing all the time. And when I first got into this, I really, it was cost prohibitive. It was so costly to do it that it didn't make sense for the small to middle market business owners to do it because it just lost its flavor because the fees kind of killed the deal. And we designed our program very consciously because I wanted to take care of the subcontractors and the people that were my clients. I didn't have Fortune 500 companies as clients of mine.
Yeah.
I had the small local businesses that were clients of mine. I wanted to make sure it priced in a way that made sense for them. And we've done a great job with that. We are now the largest. So I should tell you too, SRA 31B Admins are the name of our company, Strategic Risk Alternatives. What our core competency as a company is, we manage those insurance companies on behalf of the business owners. So when I said the 831B plan needs to look and feel like an insurance company, we manage that for our clients. And very similar to a 401k administrator, if you want to offer a 401k to your employees, you just don't go administer that yourself. You're going to hire a third-party person to administer that for you. That's our relationship to business owners.
Now, something I've always thought, and maybe I've been wrong, whenever people are self-insured, I always thought it was the big companies. I mean, everyone else, can't even touch that. But what I'm hearing you say is no, you can be,
Well,
uh,
here's the thing, Lamont. You already are self-insuring.
yeah,
It's getting back to my point. It's like, how do you want to do it though? You want to take advantage of a tax code known as 831B and use pre-tax dollars or after-tax dollars? That's
right,
all. That's what it comes down to. And think of this as like an HSA for your business, right? If you're familiar with
okay,
health savings accounts, because
yeah,
what a health savings account was originally designed for was to cover expenses that your existing insurance plan either wasn't going to cover, or you had first dollar out of pocket before your insurance didn't even kick in. So now you've pre-fund that, right? You're going to put money away into this HSA plan. You get to expense it off your taxes. And now in the event if something happens, and then here's the other thing, down the road, if you stay healthy and you didn't need it, and every year you've max funded or whatever, um, you get to turn that into a retirement vehicle as well. And ultimately, that's what we want our business owners to be able to do too. We want to be able to form an HSA for their business because unexpected expenses come at them all the time. They think they're covered and they're not covered. I mean, when I was in
right.
traditional insurance, no joke, I bet 40% of the time I told my business owners it wasn't going to be covered. That was a great conversation. I hated those conversations, but you never want to tell, but especially, these guys, friends or, acquaintances and all that stuff. And they're like, hey, man, that's not going to be covered. Here's why. I bet it was 40% of the time for commercial clients. Anyway, getting back to the HSA conversation, though, it's just a matter of putting away tax deferred dollars. So you're still expensing it. No different if I did it on my personal tax return as well. When I contribute to an HSA plan, it operates almost similarly to
So
that.
kind of the same. So if I don't use it in 1 year, the next year I got more dollars to contribute towards.
That's literally why the government, why Congress, and of course this is going back to Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, right? When we probably weren't as dysfunctional as we are today, and they said, hey, we got to create an incentive for if businesses are going to self-insure risk, let's create an incentive for them to do that in a much more tax favorable way. I mean, our tax code is complicated because there's so many incentives in it, and people call them loopholes and everything else. But in the world I live in, I would argue that our tax code, as complicated as it is, has created wealth, meaning that the risk has been out. People took the risk because the tax advantages it brought to them was worth taking. The best example I give people is 1031s, exchanges. Could
Yeah.
you imagine what would happen in the real estate market if people didn't have the option of doing a 1031? And keep in mind, on a 1031, I sell a piece of property. If I put it in, identify it in 90 days and do it in 6 months, I defer the capital gains on that. But I had to go take on more risk. I had to get
Yes.
a bigger building. I had to do all these other things in order to get that reward of deferring those taxes, right?
Yeah.
And so if you didn't have that, just that one little piece of code right there, how valuable. You would never sell a property because people don't, especially if you had a lot of equity in it, because you don't want
Yeah.
to, you get hit with, you lose 35% of it right away. What's the incentive for me versus my rent income? So
Yeah.
why do and you would never lever up, and our buildings would stagnate in pricing because there would be no demand of buy and sell. So to me, that's just a great incentive. And so I think, you know, for me, and I never really thought about it until I had somebody say that to me years ago. Our tax is as complicated as our tax code is. It has created a ton of incentive for the risk reward for the right business owners that are willing to take the risk. And it wasn't risk free, but the reward was it was attractive enough to take the risk because of the reward on the back end.
Yeah.
And I do
Yeah.
think it's created a lot of wealth in our country. That might sound really weird to say. It almost sounds like an oxymoron almost, but the more and more I get into this, I just think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the risk reward factor, but the 831B still, again, if you don't use it, let's say you sell your business, you've piled up money over the last several years. You either had claims or didn't have claims, or we can talk about distribution of risk and all those types of things. But, sell your business. Hey, this is another entity. I either sell it or give it, that's part of the sales process for the business, or I just simply shut it down, pay long-term capital gains on everything that's in it. The dollars that are going into it, just like a 401k, are invested. We don't do that. Again, a 401k administrator just administrates the plan, make sure you stay in the ERISA rules and everything else. We do that. we work with financial planners and strategic partners of the business owners all over the country, but they can self-direct those funds. There are obviously restrictions on what you can invest in and all that kind of stuff, but money makes money. And so that's another value add that we can bring into the business owners, that, their own financial planners can manage the reserves and the surplus of the plan itself. But getting back to your point you just brought up about we call it surplus, when policies expire, premium from the previous year become underwriting profit. As long as it stays inside that vehicle, it doesn't become taxable. The only thing that would be taxable is realized investment gains. So if you just simply put $100,000 in, had a money market account at 4%, you'd pay taxes on the 4%, right, at the corporate rate. But everything else stays tax deferred, and then, of course, down the road, hopefully, but more importantly, you're able to take on more of that risk for your business, right? So now you have these surpluses, you can start to, and we really see a lot of places, people take on higher deductibles. Again, very similar to health savings accounts. If I got a lump sum of money sitting in there, on renewal next year, do I want to take a higher deductible for my family plan, right?
Right.
And you could do the same thing with your business. And believe me, we've seen, especially in other parts of the country, that, Florida being a big Florida, any coastal properties have had a lot of stress with hurricane coverages, co-insurance deductibles. We continue to see first dollar loss go up. Hurricane hail coverage right now in the Midwest, if you're a farmer or ranch, it's almost not even worth getting hail coverage anymore, just based on what you got to pay out of pocket before the insurance even kicks in, and the cost to even buy that endorsement. And so there's just a ton of this stuff going on. And two, what's interesting too, LaMont, if you go back to the 1980s, the market we're in today, the insurance market, ever since COVID, it has put on more stress with insurance companies and also the insured, the business owners. You're paying more in premium, but you're getting less in coverage.
Right.
When we sit down with the business owner and do an assessment of their risk, we run through their policies, and thank God for AI, because I couldn't pay anybody enough money to read those policies. So I'm glad AI is doing it for us. But we do a summary on it. It's kind of shocking to see, especially if I can get a policy from about 4 or 5 years ago and then compare it to this year's. And it doesn't matter what industry, by the way. There is a lot more exclusions, and that's really how insurance companies operate. You get a policy that says all risk, cover for all risk. You're like, oh, geez, that's a great policy. But then what they start to do is they start to line out exclusions.
Except for.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
How many times have we been in a situation where you think you're all covered, and then lo and behold, you're not, because, you used that equipment more than the average should have been you. There's always a way out for them.
No, in fact, I was just, have you heard about the screwworm down in Texas that just got?
No, tell us.
Yeah, it's a flesh-eating worm on healthy animals. Really bizarre. Haven't had anything happen since the 1960s. It was eradicated in the 60s, and now it's come back up. And there's a lot of concerns right now because it could be very devastating to not just cattle, but all livestock. And there is no coverage for that. I mean, insurance companies got out of that coverage a long, long time ago, especially with avian bird flu. The avian bird flu was a big one too back in the day when I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, price of eggs were ridiculous. Well, they were killing millions of chickens because they had avian bird flu, and there was no way to vaccinate them or anything else. They had to destroy them. So we had this gap of, this big kill off, and then we had to wait for them to come back, and then now price of eggs are back to, somewhat normal, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, but there was that's when insurance companies got out of that coverage too, and so again, it's just but the screwworms it's the risk there is when they have to shut that, they don't want, they restrict the ability for the animal to move. What's the word? I can't even think of the word right now. That's crazy. Quarantine. They quarantine the animals. Well, I don't know how far they're going to quarantine the animal. I don't know if it's a quarter mile or 5 miles. You know what I mean? So like no cattle can move in and out of that area until everyone's. I have no idea. And the business interruption that triggers that, and I can just go on and on about risk, the risk of running a business today, the complicated, and then cyber, right? It's funny as you think about 1986, and you and I can relate to this. In fact, we were just talking about that, right? There was no internet. There was no cell phones. There was no,
Uh-huh.
and so this whole idea of cyber breach, like that wasn't even a thing when this code got
No.
passed. Brand protection. Think about brand protection today. We dump a ton of money. It doesn't matter how small or big your business is. You dump a ton of money into your social medias and everything else, your brand protection. Your brand is everything to you, especially as the owner or founder of a company. You pride yourself on your brand,
Yeah.
but it can literally take seconds to destroy and take years to rebuild. And, again, where's that money going to come from? There is no
Right.
insurance for that. There is no insurance currently for brand protection. There is for very large companies that want to pay, I think the policy starts at $100 million.
Wow. So
And
ridiculous
the
amount.
premium's probably reflective of that.
Yeah.
A good example, I always say, I talk about Target. You can talk about Target. You can talk about, what's the Mexican, the one that does the bars with you can walk through the line. They got hit with norovirus for like months. What's the name? Costa Vida. Not Costa Vida.
Oh.
No, it's not Costa Vida.
Cafe Rio?
No, it's the other one. Come on.
Chipotle?
Chipotle. It is Chipotle. Remember, I don't know if you remember that or not, but Chipotle.
Yeah, I did. It's a while back. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Chipotle stayed in the news cycle for like 12 months. It hurt their stock, but they kept building more locations. But you take a small regional business owner with 4 or 5 restaurants, they can't weather that storm. They can't. No. I mean, I've been there. I've been now that I've been doing this. We've been doing this since 2008. So we're now the largest manager of these plans in the country.
Wow.
We manage over 800 plans. That represents about 1,200 operating companies around the country.
So 831B, what percentage of the people are not using that in the U.S., let's say?
Honestly, maybe a tenth of 1% of business owners. And to be fair,
Yeah.
this code was abused, shockingly. We live I tell people the Boston Tea Party is a real thing. It's like part of our DNA as Americans. We do not like to pay any more taxes than we need to.
We have to, yes.
Yeah, then we have to. But that being said, codes like this do get abused. It's unfortunate, but back in the mid 2000s, because of estate tax planning, a bunch of estate tax attorneys got together and they started promoting this to very high net worth owners of businesses to use this more as an estate tax play versus a risk mitigation play. And that got the code in trouble. From my experience with the IRS, get me once, but don't get me twice. They went twice. So they started selling life insurance and these things, annuities. They were giving the ownership of these things to their kids and grandkids, irrevocable trusts, and they were trying to get around the estate tax planning. And that brought the attention of the IRS. And
clever.
So it was clever. I tell people it was too good to be true, right? I mean, that was a great plan, but the problem is that's not what the code was written for. But that's Americans. We are, and I work with a lot of people all over the country, all over the world, and one of the things that's very unique to our country, and people say, "Oh, we don't have culture." We have culture, and the biggest culture we have is entrepreneurship. That is very unique. The more I travel the world, the more I realize how unique that is in our country. Is entrepreneurs. It's a mindset that doesn't get seen in a lot of other parts of the world, quite honestly. But as entrepreneurs go, we will, bend, twist, and turn, and we'll make something work.
There's a creative element there.
Absolutely, there's a creative element, and so, the tax code is going to be part of that, and people are going to take advantage where they can take advantage, and sometimes they get in trouble for it. So that's one thing. I would tell you the CPA community, for the most part, they know about it, but they don't promote it. If they don't know about it, I would tell you your CPA is probably not engaged as much as you think they might be. And probably every week, my sales staff will talk to a CPA that's never heard it before, and I'm kind of shocked by that because I'm like, anybody can do it. Anybody can sign that. Anybody can do a compliance. I call them compliance public accounting, where they're just being compliant to the tax code. But the way I'm looking at CPA world, and we can get into the AI conversation, I already brought it up earlier, but AI knows the tax code better than any CPA knows it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Guarantee it.
That content.
It's complicated as hell. So, A lot of these CPAs are still trying to figure out the 2017, entertainment expense report, right? And so AI's got it down cold. I mean, so we can see AI definitely taking over the CPA community. If all you're going to do is take numbers for business owners and put them in boxes, which a lot of them do, and not give true tax advice or tax consulting, or, I tell people, tax planning is not to be done in the fourth quarter. It should be done in the first quarter, or it shouldn't even be done in the fourth quarter for the next year. But most of my business owners have their tax planning done in the fourth quarter, and the war's already been fought. All the CPA's doing is showing up and telling you what you need to pay. Well, he's not giving you any consulting work. He's not telling you what the new big beautiful bill has, right? There's R&D in there now. R&D came back bigger. There's all these other incentives now put in place. Is business owners being told that by their CPAs? They can be told that by AI now. I can tell you that. You just got to use one of those Claude or Chat or any of those people, and they'll tell you all day long what you can be doing. I hope the CPA community gets on board with true tax planning and not just showing up in the fourth quarter telling the business owner, hey, you had a great year this year, you're going to pay more money this year, and here's why.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you've given no incentive or no ideas in play for those CPAs. And we work with CPAs all over the country too, LaMont. They're frustrating to me because, to your point, I think more business owners would be doing our program. But
I think so. It's an awareness issue.
It's awareness, and CPAs got to buy into it. And hey, IRS doesn't like these things. They don't like anything that has tax advantages to a taxpayer. Their job is to collect as much tax as possible.
That's true. So they're not going to be advertising it. That's for sure.
No.
We talked about in 2000 how people were using 831Bs inappropriately. What are things for the 831B? What should be in there?
It's simple to me.
Yeah.
If you're incentivized for the sole purpose of avoiding taxes, then you should probably not do our program. You won't do our program. You won't be a client of ours.
Yeah.
If risk mitigation is first with the tax incentive, a good example is the 401k. I want to offer a 401k to my employees because I want to make sure they have good retirement, and I want to add benefits to my plan. The incentive for me, I get to take a deduction on that. And it ought to be the same way for a business owner. If I'm worried about risk management, because I've been involved where I've had to pay claims that are come out of pocket that I thought insurance was going to cover, or I can't just buy insurance for it. Where's that money going to come from? That's got to be the driver first. And then, hey, I'm going to do this because I'm incentivized for the tax purposes. If the taxes come first, I would tell you that's probably harder to defend with the IRS, honestly. And I get it.
About risk mitigation, that makes more sense. Putting that first, if that's your goal. Okay.
So it's a mindset of the client. And hey, LaMont, I mean, we've all been around business owners, and I tell people all the time, it's like, well, who's your ideal client? And, it wasn't that easy to answer that question a handful of years ago, but it is easy for me today. Now that I've gone through COVID and experienced that with business owners, if your mindset is keeping up with the Joneses, spending money, always buying new stuff, always, and you're probably not the client for us. I want our client typically is very conservative by nature, very savvy business person, runs a very good, healthy bottom line and profit consistently, regardless of what the economy does. That's our client today. That's who we're working with around the country. And, I tell clients that's being elevated because you're going to have best of class of any industry they're in. And that's kind of who our clients are. These are a little bit better echelon, higher echelon business owner, not just somebody that runs around with the head cut off all the time, or the business is running them instead of them running the business. All of that stuff kind of ties into who our client is, and that's really where it comes down to. I call it a chapter in your book as a business owner. Like, when you first start your business, you're just worried about cash flow, right? And then after that, you got to worry about operations, things running smoothly, customer experiences, and then comes the finance on the back end. I mean, that's pretty traditional to businesses. And then here comes your tax bill, and then you try to work with other trusted advisors, and all these things start to work out. So then your accountants tell you go get a 401k, maybe do a 503B bonus plan, maybe buy a building, all these, and for me, it's that final chapter in your playbook as a business owner is, should I be utilizing an 831B? Because here's what we're asking clients to do: taking money off their balance sheets and they're not missing it. Why? Because
Yeah.
they're expensing it and they're building up a tax deferred bucket of money sitting over in the back room. In the event of, they able to pull that money back into their operations and smooth the lines out. It's unfortunate, but a lot of business owners don't get to that level either. So that's
Yeah.
the reason why a lot of business owners don't do this. A lot of business owners might act like they make a lot of money, may spend a lot of money, but are they saving a lot of money?
Right.
We have all the incentive in the world to spend money in our country. It's just the way our economy works, right?
Yeah.
They keep bringing back to accelerated depreciation, and that ought to indicate to everybody right there that they want you to take on, go buy that new equipment. That's great because that just rolls dollars,
That's right.
keeps the
That's right.
economy going. That's great if you need the piece of equipment, but if you're buying it because you don't want to pay Uncle Sam any more money,
That's the wrong reason.
you got to really check yourself on that one. That's a form of insanity. That's what I saw in '08. Keep betting every year was going to be better than the next year is kind of crazy, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Well, for all the business owners out there, our listeners that want a healthy business and have, they feel like they're doing okay, but with all the insurance questions they keep asking, things are going up. I'm getting higher costs with less coverage. I think looking at 831B, they need to add that to that tool to their tool belt. Can you give us a place that they can go read about this some more or
yeah,
become
you
familiar
bet.
on your side or wherever to kind of get familiar with the whole program?
831b.com is our website. We designed it to be an educational website. I would start there, honestly.
Okay.
We got a lot of case studies on there, so it's specific to the industry they might be in. And then, two, just like everything else, man, you got to do your own due diligence on this thing. There's competitors out there. There's nobody better than us. I just tell you that right now. But
There you go.
I'm a little biased. But, but at the same time, though, there's plenty of competitors out there. I do think this space is growing rapidly, quite honestly. And tax incentive aside, it's really what's happening with traditional insurance is kind of driving that bus. Business owners are looking for additional answers. To your point earlier, like, hey, I'm paying more and getting less, but that less, that's detrimental to my company.
Yeah.
And so again, I do think it's the market we're in today. One of the things that we're telling business owners today, and we're just having a simple conversation about COVID. Been having it for a while. Obviously, it's been 6 years. It's crazy. What are you doing differently today? Are you going to rely on government next time on a PPP or the ERC programs and all the things that went on during that time? Or should you even expect the government to step in next time?
Yeah.
When you decided you're no longer an essential business, and God forbid if we never want that to happen again, no matter what. But it happened. God forbid, over the next 20 years, what would you do differently? And can we take a little bit off the top, park it off to the side, and if you're a bootstrapper, you started your own business, you run a business, you pride yourself on being that entrepreneur. I can tell you this: a lot of businesses I talked to weren't happy that they were relying on the government to bail them out, and just for that reason alone is why they're doing our program now, because they want to be they've always relied on themselves. They've always been their best investment, and the fact that they got blindsided, I would say, by that situation was kind of a wake up call for a lot of business owners. And that's really why we've been able to grow literally the last handful of years in this, bring more awareness to the table, bring on more podcasts like this, just to bring awareness to business owners. And at the right time, and I think that's what I mean by the book. At the right time, you ought to be looking at this program just because, you've done everything you're supposed to. You've been a responsible business owner. You've put the employee benefits in place. You've done all these other things. You bought your building, whether you wanted it or not. And now you're like, okay, what else can I do? And it's just like, okay, this is just one more level, and at the right time, I think it can make all the difference in the world for business owners.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today. If you haven't looked into an 831B before and you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, be aware of what it can offer you and see if this isn't that extra tool to make you just a little bit stronger and a little bit healthier in a future downturn or or company challenging event. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, LaMont. Appreciated it.
We'll catch you later. Thank you for tuning in to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. Head to fountainofvitality.com for more episodes, insights, and resources. Remember, your health is yours to own. Take charge, focus on what you can control, and keep exploring what works for you. Always be your best self, lift others, and trust the compass of wisdom. Until next time, stay vibrant and take care.